a very tough act to follow after one of India's most visionary and the globe's most visionary leaders. So thank you, Mr. Bagchi, for your time and for setting the tone for us. We have the esteemed honor of talking about a word today that is both a trending term and maybe a scary term, which is AI. We're trying to unpack as much as we can. We have a little bit of a time constraint, so I'm going to skip the introductions and maybe have our panelists do that while they're answering the questions, if they're okay with that. Just to set a little bit of context, we seem to be in a productivity paradox. When we think about it, are we replacing the work humans do with machines? And are we just doing a one-for-one rather than looking at exponential, or are we looking at incremental innovation rather than exponential innovation? So if we really think about productivity, and for us to move to that exponential phase of productivity, it's going to take a whole rethinking in terms of the evolution of skills, what the organization design looks like, what does it mean from a governance, ethics, and inclusion perspective, and what kind of resilient firms are we creating of the future? So to really get into those sections, I have a very, very esteemed set of panelists here today. I know we're right after lunch, so maybe we can start off with something a little controversial. I'll start off with you, Alokesh, since you're closest to me. If AI was an employee on your team today, what role would it play, and what designation would it have?
Sure. Thanks, Adnan. Before I get started on that particular question, what you spoke about, the productivity, I think earlier when we were having lunch at that time, you spoke about that overall productivity, some studies have come out and it has really not improved.
Right.
But truth be told, if you actually go down and add back the time spent in the chai point or sutta breaks, that would have definitely gone up.
Right.
So joking apart, I think if you look at that productivity angle itself, and from there I will get down to the question you asked me about, there are 3 levels of productivity you can look at. So it starts off with amplifying personal productivity. That's happening for all of us in some form or fashion, whether using ChatGPT, OpenAI, or any of that sort. Then there comes the organizational amplification of organizational productivity. That's where we are suffering. It has not gone to the level where we want it to. And third comes down really bringing in automation and workflow through agentic AI and taking it to the next level, the more from incremental to the exponential, what you spoke about. Now, from that context, if you ask me if I have to bring in an AI right now, I think none of the 3 which you asked about. For me, it would be more of a colleague than outsourcing some part of the work to an intern or to a strategist or something else. It would be like you and me sitting. In a sense, AI would be one of my colleagues, and today the AI is very smart in terms of giving the answers very quickly. Maybe there are things they are deficient in, while I'm better at something else, and we will be collaborating together. So that's the way I will bring in, wherein AI is just one more employee in the company.
So true collaboration partner in that sense.
Sure.
And on the topic of collaboration, I'm going to move down to my panelist Sandeep, and I'm going to come back to you, Rajiv. Just because we're talking about collaboration. Sandeep, when you think about the future of work, what does true human-AI collaboration really look like? And what does it look like to you, and what does it look like to your organization as well? Sandeep, that's for you. Yes, that's for you, sorry.
Am I audible?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, sorry, I missed that. Yeah, so I'll give an analogy, and let me start with that, especially post-lunch. I think that's really required. What it means to me, I think we need to look at it more holistically, and what definitely I would say is it's a relationship built on amplification of potential. And in a word, what would that mean? It's like a marriage, you know? It has shared intelligence, absolutely, trust and transparency, loads of that. It weaves into the entire AI system. Co-creativity and co-creation and creativity, absolutely that as well. So all of this come together to form a larger ecosystem of AI. It's not about technology, it's not about people, but it's about how we are leveraging it as well. So we need to look at it, we need to take a step back and look at it a little more holistically than a man in the machine is my point of view.
Got it. Again, and I think a running theme is, I think, collaboration, and I think we'll end up harping on that a little more as we go on. You said marriage, and Rajiv, I'll come to you. In today's day and age, a lot of people think marriages are a hype. So is AI and is reskilling a hype? Rajiv, that's for you, yeah.
So me, huh?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I don't think it's hype anymore. I think it's a reality. If you see, I think all of us are using the different tools. So that's one part of it. So I think if you dive down to semiconductors, where I've been working for the last 20 plus years, we have seen AI impacting at all different levels. See, if you see two big components of semiconductors, one is design, the other is the manufacturing part. If you see design today, designing big complex chips like GPUs, which NVIDIA's or the Qualcomm's or other guys are doing, it takes many months with hundreds of engineers. And it's very, very complex because many of these chips have billions of transistors. So when you have billions of transistors, laying it out, connecting them together, is a big task, and you have to do it really correctly. So that's why it's, for a human, it's a lot of it is repetitive. So that's where AI comes in. And with AI tools, particularly coming from different EDA vendors, which is a software which helps people to design semiconductors. So we have seen that if we use those tools, the time you will basically compress from months to weeks. So you can see, which basically states that it's not a hype. And all of us, all the semiconductor industry is using it. And the same thing holds true for manufacturing. See, if you see an example of TSMC, which is one of the largest chip manufacturing companies based out of Taiwan. So they're using AI in manufacturing using different technologies where they have been able to increase the productivity by 20%. So it's definitely, whether it is design or whether it is manufacturing, is not at all a hype, it's a reality today.
Great, and a great use case on how AI is augmenting productivity, how it is augmenting the human collaboration. Saurav, I'll come to you last but not the least, obviously, and we've established that AI is not a myth, and I think maybe we're all in agreement there. But is it really a skill? And I think it's an appropriate question to ask at a skill summit. Is AI truly a skill, or is it just a technology that we're treating as a skill?
Sure. I hope I'm audible. First of all, my name is Saurav. I'm the founder and CEO of a startup company, which is a software company into 5G domain. Now, talking about the question that you just asked, and I've been listening to my co-panelists, before we talk about whether AI is a skill or technology, I think the first step is that we should talk about AI adoption, and that's how we started the journey in Simnovus as well, or maybe I'm sure that in all the companies, that's how it gets started. First, we have to change our mindset that AI is a reality now. We have to adopt it. And then it goes into, the skilling and also using it as a technology, right? So what I would say is that when you start adopting your AI, strategy into your workflows, day-to-day workflows, or as a strategist or as a collaborator, you have to first skill your existing teams or gather or acquire those skills where you can build your own AI stack, your own AI models, be able to optimize it to your usage, specific usages, integrate those into your workflows so that you are able to achieve certain use cases, and also keep continuously optimizing it, checking the prompt, like prompt engineering and those kind of stuff. And once that is established, then it goes on to the technology. Now it is ready to be used as a technology. So it definitely augments to your different, at different levels. Like for example, as a founder, I have found my AI model as my collaborator, as I can call it as a chief of staff. It helps me to take more data-driven strategic decisions, for example. Similarly, it can help a QA engineer and you know, any developer or HR or any function of the company, right? So it's, I would say it's both technology and skill, but we have to start with the adoption. That's what I would say.
And a great framework there when you talk about the adoption and then the implementation, almost like a stack. When you think about technology stack, it's almost as a skill stack, right? For it to truly be exponential, which is what we're getting at, you need to have both stages of it. Okay, I'm going to harp on that a little bit more, and Alokesh, come back to you. You're a data guy. You deal with data at large volumes. You also deal with the human-AI collaboration. If we have to think about the human-AI collaboration as, say, what we call fusion skills, what are some of these that are emerging? And what are some of these that make humans truly successful in an AI-first world?
So that's an interesting question. And just to correct you, more than a data guy, we are into decision sciences. Okay. So it's all about enabling the decision, but through the journey from data to decision. So that way you are correct. So in that perspective, if you really ask me between the fusion, what you are talking about, so think about it like Einstein's E equal to mc square, we have a c square here also. So the AI is very good in bringing in clarity. It can go through tons of data, look at things, give you patterns very quickly, whatever is trained on or new things it should be able to identify. But as a human being, what I am good at or human beings are good at is asking the questions, curiosity. That's where the second C comes in. So I think it comes down to the collaboration of these two, wherein maybe it's more like a microscope which is able to allow you to go deeper, look at the things, but for you to ask the question, assimilate, synthesize, and make meaning out of it is where the human comes in. So that's the way both of them would work in future as well. And the question you asked about the skill comes down to that. So skills is, so if you really look at it, AI in a sense is more like a scaffolding on which you are working on to improve your other decision-making things. But for that, you need to have that curiosity. You need to be able to assimilate things. You should be able to interpret things. You should be able to tell the stories, because that's where the real-world organization, the storytelling matters, right? So those are the characteristics which human beings will bring in, while the AI will become smarter and smarter, able to go ahead and sift through more and more data and give you more clarity, quicker, faster, better.
So curiosity, clarity, and maybe a third C, which is collaboration, right?
Absolutely.
So that's a really interesting model. We're talking a lot about the good stuff, about the human-AI collaboration, but there is an overarching looming threat. Not a threat, but maybe a fear psychosis. And I think threat may be the wrong word, but there definitely is, and maybe it comes down to one of those C's, which is the clarity about the collaboration, right? Rajiv, what are some of the fears that you see even from an employee lens, from an organizational lens, when it comes to both the adoption, like Saurav said, the adoption and the implementation of AI?
I think that there's definitely a lot of hype about that people will start losing their jobs. I think but the fact is slightly different. I think what AI is going to do is, AI is going to relieve humans from the repetitive work which they may not be really good at. And we are not really good at repetitive work. Where our value comes in is basically using emotional intelligence, using basically things which AI cannot differentiate. The ethics, for example, I think that's where our real contribution will come. What it will happen, see, I think most of the jobs will be, where a person will be at least 50 to 60% more efficient now, which means that we are left with a lot of time where we can use for other important things. So that's what I would like to comment on.
Unburden the employee, the human with repetition, and kind of give them the tools to do high order.
So if you zoom now into the semiconductors, I was talking about bigger chips, which sometimes there's a simple thing called floor planning, because chip is finally how much of real estate you will use, and the smaller the real estate, the more efficient the real estate. the better profitability is. I think with these tools in place, you can actually do the floor planning in such an efficient way that you can overall reduce the price many times. So I think, so that's what AI brings in, and well as you still need people who can see whether this makes sense, because there will be a lot of those smaller changes which the chip architecture, I mean, that's where the high end of the job will basically become more, and you will be able to utilize your time in those high-end stuff and relieve all your low-end stuff to the AI. And this will keep on evolving, right? I mean, you'll start pushing the limits of AI. At the same time, you'll be starting pushing the limits of the human beings towards the better side.
So yeah, just having more clarity in terms of what the art of possible is. And that's a great point. And Sandeep, coming to you, doing all of this requires a whole kind of org design, systems thinking, a real kind of relook at what this looks like, especially at scale, right? And that's probably something that you're looking at quite actively at IBM as well. How do you create systems in place to really have very fungible but collaborative human-AI collaboration at scale?
Good question. Now one is, and there are two parts to it. One is the ecosystem that any organization creates, and we all do that. We're all doing that, in our own different ways. But it's also about creating the mindset, because, the common theme and the common thread that we're all talking about is how do we adapt? How are we resilient enough for it? But the whole point is when you actually take a step back and look at it, across every industrial revolution, right, we had to adopt. And adapt both ways, right? We had to kind of learn up, and have the mindset to learn as well, right? So to bring all of these together, to bring an ecosystem together where we can make sure that people are scaled up, but before that to make sure that the mindset is there to learn up as well. And of course, we do get it from the industry, we get it from our entire the ecosystem around us in terms of hey, we will need to scale up, right? We read and hear about it day in and day out. But to create that right, to make sure we are articulating it rightly within the organization, and to create that entire technological ecosystem to make sure people are skilling up, I think that really helps, to bring up from a people standpoint. As far as the organization system is concerned, obviously there will be each one of us has our own ways and means of restructuring to make sure that we integrate AI systems into our ways of working.
You said something that was really interesting, which you talked about mindset. And I think a lot of that, that's a great starting point. Sort of coming to you, you're a CEO, you're a president, you're an entrepreneur, you're a creator at its core sense. A lot of the mindset, whether it's a large organization, a startup, or mid-sized organization, is top-down, right? A lot of it, and I can give you an example with, I work at a consulting firm, and a lot of our AI transformation really those thought starters come from our CEO, who's really asking the questions of how can we do it better, how can we do it faster, how can we do more with less. So from a mindset perspective, and I know you were talking a little bit about this earlier, what is needed, if you had to be brutal and say there are 2 or 3 leadership mindset traits that are core to creating an AI-first organization, what would those be? And from and if you have an example from your own case.
Sure. First of all, I agree that it has to be a top-down approach. Whether you are the CEO or the chief minister of a state, or head of a department, or a teacher, first of all we have to stop debating this that AI is going to replace humans. We have to get out of this fear. That is not going to happen. This is like a pre-industrial revolution mindset. We have to come over that. I thought that human beings are now more confident. We should be very confident, and we have to understand that the AI or any technology, it's not like today it is AI, tomorrow there will be some other technologies. We have semiconductor technology as well. We have 5G technology as well. All these technologies are only going to augment, going to make your life better. And in case of AI, what it actually doing is that it is, I think someone said in our panel that it is freeing up the humans to do more and do more futuristic, because it gives you the space to be more creative in your thinking, to be more strategic in your thinking, and innovate, right? That's what even industrial revolution, when the first machines came in, that's the impact that it gave to the humankind. humans became better. So that's what AI is doing. And of course, as a leader or as a head of whatever you're doing as a CEO, you have to make it like almost mandatory in your company to adopt AI. In fact, in my case, what I did was that, I'll just give you a very funny example. So initially when we started, suggesting our engineers, or especially let's say developers, to start using AI for coding or code reviews, they were reluctant because they thought it is their skill to code, not AI skill. And they thought it is not ethical, I have to code myself. This is my knowledge. But then they had to finally understand that what AI does is that you have to be more design thinking. You have to think more about the designs and what the logic and things like that. Not coding is not a skill set. That can be done by a machine. So just a small example, but this is how we have to change the mindset, I would say.
Rajiv, you wanted to?
So I think what we're transitioning from a knowledge-based economy to innovation-based economy. So I think that's what it's all about.
And that's a great point. I'm just cognizant of the time as well, and I do want to touch upon a very, very important aspect of the whole AI conundrum is the ethics and governance, right? AI as a skill and a technology, like we've discussed, is an opportunity, but is also a threat of inequity. And I think, when Mr. Bakshi was talking about it earlier, when you look at AI, it should be AI for all. If you're looking at that from an organization perspective, a society perspective, the world perspective, there is an inequity that comes into play with access. And that's something that we can't ignore, right? So how do we ensure that this new workforce remains inclusive as well as ethical? Because when we are dealing with large-scale data and systems, there is, governance, human governance kind of can take a backseat. Maybe I'll start off with Alokesh.
So I think if you really look at it, it's like the mirror, right? So we are projecting ourselves through AI. So when you are talking about ethics, inclusivity, it boils down to that. So it starts off with, as I said earlier, if you start looking at AI as just a tool and you start doing discrimination with AI itself, saying I'll outsource my work and get it done, it starts from there. So the inclusivity needs to start from that very beginning where you are not looking at AI as a tool, but more as I said, a co-worker. Which means that needs to bring in both the ethical part of it, the way when you and I are having conversations, how we are bringing into our conversations, the ethics part of it, that needs to go in. But in terms of when you are looking at it, using the technology, the tools to build the solutions, the rest of the guardrails needs to be there. Whether you are building a model, data model, AI model or anything, there needs to be guardrail around ethics. There needs to be governance around it. And we'll have to ask those questions up front. So it cannot be brushed under the carpet. So it needs to be embedded into the whole solution design, development and operationalization part of it as opposed as an afterthought.
Just as a follow-on, do you have a playbook or a governance framework that you have at place at Mu Sigma that helps you, at least to some extent, alleviate some of maybe whether it's bias or if it's anything else that comes up with?
Yeah. So for AI, we have a conceptual architecture itself, which looks at, so it's the whole conundrum. So where you have the data, you have the agents which are going ahead and pulling out from the data, you are going to different models, you have the model gardens, then you have the governance mechanism. So you have governance models also sitting in, which has those biases, rules, which needs to be controlled upon. So that needs to be there when you are implementing the enterprise-grade AI, you are introducing that. And hence, I think it cannot be an afterthought or you just build a COE within the organization and you let it go. It won't work. Yeah. So you need to really lay down the entire foundation across the board to make it successful.
From the people lens, Sandeep, just coming to you, how are there any ways that you're doing this from a learning perspective where you're on the equity part of it, that you're creating, you're making AI ubiquitous in a way for your employees across the organization so that everyone is future ready rather than just some?
Well, absolutely, and because whether it's awareness, of course, it depends on the levels of expertise that we actually require based on what you do and where you are within the organization. But having said that, to a certain degree and level of awareness and understanding, enough to be able to leverage it, across the board, across the organization is what we're doing. We're leveraging it across the board.
So does that change, for example, your learning paths, your career paths?
Absolutely. It's rolled out across to the entire organization and has been made mandatory as well.
Awesome. And just maybe coming down to the last part of it in terms of, we've talked about collaboration, but I guess the other side of that is productivity. So in this AI first world, Saurav, maybe I'll start off with you. Are there new age metrics or measures of productivity that you're looking at that have now kind of become table stakes with AI in the loop?
So I think it's too early to get there. As I said, we are in very early stages of, first of all, adopting it. And then I think Alokesh said that we have to then start integrating that into our workflows, making it more autonomous. That is the next step. And then we go to the productivity. I'm sure that once we are able to cross those 2 or 3 initial steps, then we'll be able to know what are those metrics that we are looking at. At this point of time, what we definitely know is that it makes everybody's work more efficient, more data-driven, and it saves your time. Now, how much, those are the metrics that comes in only when you are able to harness the entire potential in your organization.
So your first priority at this point is large-scale adoption and then
integration
and then get into the implementation part of it. Rajiv, maybe.
So if I have to put one metric though, I would say it's more about how can you do more with less.
I guess I was coming down to, I'm a consultant, so I guess I'm coming down to how are you measuring return on AI?
Right. So because see, that's the way to look at it. It is not about, so today if I have to tell you, within our organization, 30% of the code is being written by the machines. What does that mean? I mean, is it about the job security, what we were talking about? It's not from that angle. But now we can do more, which means with the same amount of budget you had, you should be able to answer more questions. And that's what is needed for your decision making.
That delta then becomes your
the value addition.
Your value add.
That's correct.
Awesome. Well,
just to add to that, I'll just add one point to that. And I kind of brought it up earlier on as well, that with every industrial revolution, we had to kind of do things differently. But picking on the thread here, for this particular point, to do more with less, as an example, even if you go back a couple of years when, there was a lot of knowledge management systems out there in the domain, or expertise location. It was the same mantra, right? So, we are kind of evolving, and we continue evolving in different ways and means, different technology.
Awesome. Well, we're almost at the top of the hour, but we do have an audience that's a mix of professionals, but there are also a lot of first-time job seekers. There are people who are upskilling. So I'll use the panel here, since you all have your industry experience and you're doing large-scale AI transformation. If there's, and I'll start from Saurav. Saurav, if there's one skill that you think every student, say from a collegiate level or a first-time job seeker, needs to integrate into their learning module, and as someone that is, you're on the other end, you're hiring these people, what is that one skill you would recommend, or one course that you recommend that every student today takes?
I'll answer this by blending it into the other topic that we were discussing earlier, which is equity, right? I would really urge and request everyone, be it the state government or the companies or the central government, not to repeat the mistake that we did with Facebooks and Google. We can have, not only talk about the equity, but also the sovereignty, right? So one skill, before I will not ask the new generation or the upcoming, budding engineers to become AI users. What you can do let's say if you are studying engineering, what you can do is that you just pick up any open source AI model and make your own AI stack and build it so that it will help you in your day-to-day life. You know your use case the best. So if you can build your own AI buddy yourself as an engineer, that is the skill set that you should be looking at.
Absolutely, and truly build India, as we move towards building India into a product nation, really kind of develop, right? Not just learn skills. I'm going to change the question for you a little bit, Sandeep. If you had to, and I think Saurav talked a little bit about this in terms of doing things differently. If I give you a crystal ball and you were in the future and you had to think about one thing you wish we did differently about AI adoption, what would that be?
That's a difficult question. But in terms of adoption, I think it's important for us to integrate that with our lives in terms of our work lives, and that becomes very important. It's still considered a tool and a technology, but that's not where we are going. It needs to be really integrated with the way we actually work day in and day out, and that's when we can really call it a success, not otherwise. It goes back to the question of your productivity metrics as well. What truly is productivity? And that answers the question if we really integrate it with our work.
Rajiv, for you, if we could go to the workforce of 2030, which is shockingly not that far away, in one phrase or one word, what would that be? What would be the work? What would be the future of work? What would that look like?
So I think we probably will need to integrate STEM with humanities and others, and that's where probably will help us to get prepared for skills beyond 2030.
A more blended curriculum, you're saying, at a collegiate and a school level. And then last but not least, Alokesh, if AI is the topic today, and I'll give you the crystal ball as well, and if you want 2030, what do you think is going to be the next disruptive technology?
I don't know. But I think just going back to the aspect of, I wish what we should be doing more, the question you asked, I do have something around that, where I think I feel today we are focusing more on how to make machines better thinking like humans. But I wish we are spending more time on training humans to be more like humans. The human ingenuity, human curiosity, because that's going to be the next way for us to survive, where the ability to learn faster, you change before the world is changing. So that's what, maybe more than focusing and fixated on machines to be more like humans, we should be more humans to be more humans.
Yeah, maybe that's a lost skill, right? And that's going to be the future, is how do we rebuild human-to-human interaction when AI and technology becomes table stakes in that sense.
Sure.
Well, thank you, panelists. Sorry.
Can I just add one point? Especially because, we are at the Skills Summit. So I just want to give one pointer, especially to ones who are just out of college right now, in terms of what skill, and just picking on sort of where you left off. The one skill that's most important and becomes more important as we go forward is entrepreneurial skills. I think Rajiv touched upon it in having the STEM and humanities as well, but I'd like to extend that. I think that's very, very important. Having a product mindset and entrepreneurial skills, that will define our success from a country standpoint.
Awesome. Well, on that high, I think it's a great closing note. Thank you, panelists. Thank you for accommodating the time change, firstly. Thank you for accommodating the moderator change. But most importantly, thank you for sharing your insights. A lot to unpack here, a lot to take back in terms of clarity, curiosity, collaboration, and really what the future of work looks like. So thank you very much, and thank you everyone for listening in.
Thank you.